Welcome to the Maine Science Podcast. I'm Kate Dickerson. Today's episode is a conversation I had with Kirsten Hibbard, who is the Executive Director of the Challenger Learning Center of Maine. Kirsten and I have known each other a long time, and our organizations have been longtime partners in a bunch of different informal education programs. Even though we've known each other for a while, I still learned a ton about Kirsten during our conversation. One thing I already did know, and that I'm sure comes through, is her deep love of all things STEM and getting Mainers excited about exploring our world. Our conversation was recorded in December 2025. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Today's episode is supported by Maine Technology Institute. MTI is celebrating 25 years of making grants, loans, and equity investments to businesses, organizations, and entrepreneurs to strengthen Maine's innovation economy. Kirsten, welcome to the Maine Science Podcast. You and I have known each other, it feels like a million years, but it hasn't been quite that long. But we've partnered up for a really long time, starting back when I did the Science Festival. And at some point recently, I realized Kirsten would be great to talk to about how she got where she is. So I'm really glad that you are willing to talk to us. I'm just going to do a little spoiler here. I think people will be surprised to know that you worked as an engineer for a while.
Yeah.
Only because if they're like me, they're like, well, she's just always done Challenger stuff. So I was kind of hoping you'd just kind of do the lay of the land for us. What's the science and engineering hook for you?
Well, I'm so excited I get to actually be in the podcast. So thank you for having me. Yeah, so I've always loved the world of STEM. Let's say I've always been a fan. And I am so fortunate to have landed and get to be part of an amazing organization, which is the Challenger Center here in Bangor. But yep, I would say my love for STEM has been a long time running. Like you said, really going back to my major in college, which was engineering. And as you may know, I am from away. So I'm also fortunate that STEM in a roundabout way has brought me to Maine. So I'm very lucky that way.
The fact that you've always been interested in engineering and STEM, I mean, that's good, right? Some people come to it at all different times. So my first question is, what engineering and why engineering? Because you are a little bit younger than me, but not enough younger than me that it was clear that engineering was a path for anybody who didn't already know about it.
I come from a family of engineers. So it was always kind of this funny joke that like, oh, yes, you'll be an engineer. Like, of course, you come from engineers, you'll be one. But I will say that I'm the first female engineer from my family. So, that is a big milestone. I was fortunate enough to grow up in the greater Atlanta area in the suburbs of Atlanta. And in doing so, I was actually very close to a really great engineering school, Georgia Tech, if people don't know the area. And so was just in a really good community that fostered math and science all the way through. I will say I probably had the best physics teacher ever, Miss Boudreau. So I will say just that. I was fortunate to have a lot of support, whether at home or at school. When engineering felt like a natural fit, I think it was because of that support. Lucky enough to actually be a presidential scholar at Georgia Tech, which is a really great opportunity. If you have children in your lives in the southeastern part of the state, it just is a really great opportunity at Georgia Tech and to be part of that community too. But I was a mechanical engineer, or am, but that was my major. But I will say another fun part about engineering and kind of this idea of support systems, I was actually part of Alpha Omega Epsilon, is this professional engineering sorority for women. And it's really talking about the sisterhood and supporting others. And yes, 25% or less of your major might be the gender that you identify with. So that was a really neat organization to be a part of. And they weren't just MEs, they were chemies, bioengineers, just civils, everything. But it really was saying we support each other. And we really, in that case, met with other women who are out there forging ahead for us and kind of who are out there in the world. And so that was really a neat support system within Georgia Tech, too, that I got to be a part of.
All right. So you grew up just outside of Atlanta. You were in the Southeast. I know you got to Maine. Tell us that path.
So out of Georgia Tech, went to work for General Electric. They have a really awesome operations management leadership program. It's really saying, we see you as a future leader within our organization, as an engineer. And as an engineer, thinking as a leader, that is a part you need to add to your toolbox. So they really cultivated that. And so with that, you actually travel all over the U.S. I was in a lot of different manufacturing facilities, one of them being Maine. And so when I was in Maine for one of my rotations was like, this place is amazing. I like it. It fulfills my professional wants and needs, but then also on a personal level, like what an amazing place to live. Just the outdoors, the small town feel of it. So then when I came out of that program, they call it rotate off the program. It was like, I want to have a permanent position in Maine. That was a big part. So being a manufacturing engineer for GE is just awesome, really integrating technology into how you can make things better for people, obviously better for the bottom line, but really saying, how can we do this better in a smart way and really do it in an innovative way? So that's where it's like, wow, people think about engineering and it's not just sitting in some cubicle. It's like really using that creative aspect, which was great and I loved.
It's so interesting. You're the second person I've spoken with actually mechanical engineering. The other one is a current graduate student, and she talked explicitly about the appeal of being able to use creativity as part of her work. And that is not the usual way that people think about engineering. I mean, I agree with it. I think it's totally on target, but we don't talk about that part of engineering. I mean, let's be real. There's a creative aspect in virtually every type of path that you choose, but I don't think people realize quite at the forefront it can be in different engineering programs.
Oh, it's like, okay, as growing up, you love puzzles and mind tricks of I got to figure this out, and it's a brain teaser. And it's almost like that. You show up to work every day and you think, wow, I have this problem. All right, if I'm going to mathematically calculate it, but then think totally outside the box, and then you can come up with some amazing solutions that, yes, require the math and the science, but dang, can be really, really fun. I loved that aspect of it. Loved it.
One of the things I most appreciate about every time I talk to you is your deep passion for what it is you're doing right now. And it's clear that you have carried that with you with engineering, but now you're running the Challenger Learning Center of Maine, which is not the same as manufacturing engineering. I mean, it's a lot of creative problem solving, a lot of cool stuff, but it's not that. So how did you end up in the world of informal education?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a teaser. So GE many times allows their employees, if they have initiative within the community, to really explore that. And so when I was in one of my rotations down in North Carolina, GE supported me to be like, hey, my fellow engineers. So think about him encouraging your whole department to be like, we're going to run a day to talk about engineering. And really, it was the aspects of STEM, all the letters of STEM. We're going to run it at a local college for Girl Scouts for free. And I went to each of the cubicles being like, all right, Tim, you're a great electrical engineer. Let's do this. You're going to run this station, right? And so they're like, yeah, sure. Whatever, Kirsten. They showed up. It was free. So it wasn't sold out. It was completely filled. It was just this amazing time doing experiments all day. And these engineers were like, wow, we got out of the facility. That was kind of great. That was awesome. And I was like, ooh, this is step one. Again, this was in our free time, just kind of brought me a lot of joy. Like, Kate, that filled my cup. So let's say, had been able to do a couple of those things along the way, which a lot of people do in different ways, and I think as professionals. But then personally, I was at a point with my family where we were really trying to say, all right, we're going to have babies. What can we do? How do we want our family to be? And part of that was saying we were fortunate enough with my husband and myself to say, I'd like to stay home more with babies and maybe not have my manufacturing schedule. So luckily, we could do that. So staying home with kids part-time, but then I still wanted my toe in the door of STEM, right? Because that was still my joy. And so that's what was neat about this greater Bangor area here is there was a Challenger Center. And it was saying, it was a very small ad in the newspaper. Like, I don't think I look at newspaper ads anymore, but at the time it was saying like, hey, we're a STEM outreach, and I was like, oh, I've tried some of that before. I like that. And I could work part-time and be home 3 days a week with an infant. And so it started off very minimal, where it was really just literally doing the STEM outreach where I'm not an educator by training. I had a passion about it, but I had all the other elements that I needed to be able to teach the STEM topics and could do it on a schedule that really worked for me as a primary parent in my family. And then, of course, you just keep getting sucked in, Kate. And you're like, I want to try that. I want to run that club. Let's run summer camp. But it's neat. At the Challenger Center here is really kind of known for, as a small nonprofit, to create schedules that allow people to fit that with their home life, which isn't always the case, and not all businesses can create that culture. But then also, it's a beautiful blend of, I'm not the only engineer here. And there are teachers here. And it's really kind of looking at people that either work in STEM or are really strong educators and blend those all together. And we work well together to really create this full aspect of promoting STEM for Maine students. So yeah, Challenger, I'm here, loving it. And you don't have to know space work at Challenger, but you have to get excited about it.
Which is not really that hard, let's be honest, right? I mean, it's not hard for you and I. So I think the ability to have a culture of deep flexibility is really forward thinking. And I was really lucky enough back in the dark ages 25 years ago, when my son was an infant, I worked at another nonprofit, really small. I was out in Seattle, and they changed my work expectations so that I could do that kind of full-time, part-time drop down. You're right. It allows you to have this other part of your brain going that you need without feeling like you have to cut off one part of you entirely. And I often wondered how that can become more standard. And I don't have a good answer. I think unless it gets mandated somehow, which is not how the world works, like it has to be you find the right company or the right organization with that culture. And my experience has always been you get it back in so many ways because you get people who are totally invested while they're with you and bring their best, and they aren't having to figure out all the hard stuff. But it's hard. You know, running a nonprofit, it's hard. Like, how do you balance all the part-time work? How do you balance the benefits? How do you balance all of it? It makes it harder on the people running the place.
Yeah.
It just does. And you have to be okay with that. I'm curious, like, it sounds like that has always been the culture at Challenger. Is that true?
It is. Challenger is a place that really is about creating things for students, for children. And so if a staff member has an immediate, their nuclear family has a student in it, if their extended family, it's like, yeah, involve them. Ask what they're passionate about. Include that in part of why you're working here. And it's always like, bring them along, right? This is for them. And so there's always a strong statement that when Challenger was started, the primary people were hired to start. All right, we're going to start our organization. We're going to hire our first 3 people, right? Well, one of them set up a pack and play in the office, and that baby was there. And you can wear your baby to a meeting. That's just been the standard from day one. And bring those students when you're having a program. Bring them. They're a part of it. They're part of your life, and they're part of who we want to reach here. So I think that is a really neat integration that literally started from day one. And we say that too when we're hiring people.
Okay, so I realize we're talking about Challengers that everybody in the whole world knows about what you do. And I think one of the best parts about Challenger is that you have to want to be talking about space, and that's great. But I think one of the things that you guys do the best is reminding people all of the things that NASA does that are space dependent, perhaps, but not space entirely. So here's your chance. Tell us exactly how you at Challenger do the STEM outreach, and please throw in the things that people would be surprised about.
Yeah, we are definitely a Bed Bath & Beyond. There is a beyond for us. So kind of our heart of gold. And people may know or may not know, but we have a physical building here in Bangor. And inside of our building, we have rooms that look like mission control, space lab, a room that looks like the inside of a rocket. And our primary function since day one is students are going to come on a field trip and they're going to get assigned a STEM job. So they'll be the engineer, the navigator, the geologist, the biologist. And for a 2.5 hour mission simulation, they're going to have that job as if they are a mission controller or an astronaut, and they're going to simulate a mission, a space mission. And that's always been our heart of gold. But the mission for Challenger is to promote STEM and STEM careers. So that's just one part of it. Since COVID, we've been running virtual missions. So if students can't get to us, we're going to run a virtual mission with them. We also take STEM programs places. And a STEM program can be kind of from a classic, what you would expect of rockets, to our Lego spike kits, to we have a wind turbine program, just talking about electricity and just all kinds of aspects of STEM. And we can run that here. We can take it to a school. But it's not just the school time that we care about. We also care about out of school. That can be after school. So we help run after school programs either at our center, can be at a local school. We've even run it at libraries. Out of school also represents when they are out of school in the summer or on vacation. So we run so many summer camps, Kate, and they're completely full at this point after registration's open 2 days. But We're running all different types of summer camps, not just space. One may have a space theme, but it's really saying all of these things can benefit from space research. And it may just be research about our own planet, which is the most studied planet, actually. And then another big part of it is also saying we're going to run public programs. We're going to run PD sessions for teachers. Like we have an ERIS PD session, which is basically helping teachers fill out the NASA application to do a downlink with the ISS and how to use hand radio and how to do it at their schools and really connect with great SMEs at NASA. Or we're now integrating more and more of commercial space flight contractors. So we're talking about Blue Origin, we're talking about SpaceX, but it's not just the 40 astronauts of the astronaut crew, it's really the 40,000 jobs that support it and what that means for all those different aspects. So a lot happening at Challenger. Sometimes they think of us as wholesalers to schools, which is great. We support educators the most, but we really are saying we want to reach students all over Maine in all different ways to really just get them excited about STEM. And that's a lot what we overlap with you.
Yeah, we do have some really great overlap. So one quick note for those of you who aren't used to the nonprofit education jargon, PD is professional development. And that is actually one of the ways that Challenger and Discovery Museum have worked a lot together with our Science Teacher Academy. And we have some really great photos that we have used. That, one of the best things that I like about watching our educators work with adults is that you see the same looks of joy and recognition and creativity that you see on kids. It's exactly the same face, and it's really cool. Do you mind just giving a quick background on how Challenger as an organization formed? Not you personally, but we're far enough away from the genesis of that not everybody knows that anymore.
We are. And this is something that usually with every group that visits, we actually start with. So our center, the Challenger Center, as a national organization, was started by the families of the 1986 Challenger shuttle disaster. So right after the disaster happened, in fact, this January 2026 will mark 40 years since that disaster. The family members of the astronauts really wanted to create a living memorial, not just some statue somewhere. Like this was that teacher in space mission that impacted so many because so many students were watching live from their classrooms. So they're saying like, okay, how can we continue this? This really create a legacy. And they met as family members. They brought in others. They had other educators kind of in their inner circle. They even went to the set of Star Trek, Kate, and were like, okay, if we made something, would it be like this, right? And so they really want to make a hands-on approach. And then out of it, within less than a year, came what's known as the Challenger Center. So they said, we're going to create a place where students can go and carry on a mission. And so then Challenger Centers have grown from all over the U.S., even a couple internationally. Right now we're at 33 centers. And here we are almost 40 years later. Challenger Centers have flourished and have really kept that mission going and have served so many students. And it's amazing. I also serve on the national board for Challenger. I represent what's the center director seat, the voice of the centers. And when I go to those meetings every quarter, I'm amazed, Kate, that the family members 40 years later are still so involved, that their purpose, the love that they use to create this, it's still there. I mean, to be involved with the organization 40 years later, it's amazing. And I think speaks to the power that really of creating something that has lasted and honored the crew in that way. So it's really special. And we see it as a very positive thing going forward, out of something that was just horrific. Amazing things have come out of that.
I agree. I have an incredibly vivid memory of that day for a bunch of reasons, none of which I will go into now. But I just like to see something so longstanding grow out of what was just heartbreaking for those families. It's an inspiration to all of us in many ways. And I think it's a good reminder that you can really make an impact in all sorts of different ways. Okay, now that the heavy part is over, I do want to ask you, do you have a favorite mission that you all run? Or maybe not favorite. Do you have one that you just find wicked enjoyable?
Yeah, so recently in 2025, we just upgraded all of our simulators. So they look brand new. We got new computers, new speakers, like lights. So it's all new and intense. With that came upgraded software. So I would say pre our upgrades, I loved our Comet mission. There were moments in our mission where students just are really coming together and we're making big decisions themselves. And that storyline I happen to like. So it's collecting samples from a comet. Like many missions, it was based on Comet Built 2 mission that NASA had, but parallels nicely with Comet Bennu and the mission that's happening more recently. But my newest favorite is actually our Earth mission. So we didn't have missions geared towards high school, and we do now. With our upgrades, we have a mission it can be run by 8th graders who are ready for a challenge, but really for 9th, 10th of really saying how we are using satellites to monitor climate change, whether it's erosion, also talking about extreme weather, how we are using satellites to monitor it and report back to Earth to keep people safe, giving them plenty of notice, all these things. And we can run a lot of different, they call it scenarios during the mission. And we can kind of push a group. If they're doing well, we're going to hit them with some scenarios and emergencies. And the Earth one, I really like, obviously, because it's this topic that matters now, like matters right now. But it's doing it in a way that the engineering side is part of me saying, this is very factual. The satellite's collecting this data, report on the data, boom. But what it is it's really taking this topic that's very scary and hard as a one singular person to say, how can I affect climate change in a positive way? Well, I feel like our Earth mission now says you as a student can have this job and you can see how using a satellite, reporting it back, and communicating in these ways can really benefit those on Earth. And so it's helping make them feel like they could have a positive impact in these types of roles, even if they work for an agency such as NASA and how they would do it there. So I love that. That's powerful. And the groups that are coming to us aren't just your classic, oh, here's our Earth Science group. Sometimes it may be the current events class, right? Of what's a current event, or it may be a different kind of group that is here for team bonding or for career exploration, but then they find out, wow, yeah, then it can be focused on this aspect of science. And so, man, that's becoming my new one. Our Earth mission is called Earth Odyssey is its formal name.
So how critical was the update for you?
Yeah, as nonprofits, it's always hard to not just think in the moment in regards to fundraising, but really think ahead and setting yourself up well. What would be your fixed assets, but really saying I'm going to invest in our future well and take a moment. We had not done a big upgrade like that since we opened, literally 20 years prior. Challenger was incorporated in Maine in 2001, but opened their doors in 2004. So rolling into 2024, we're kind of like, now is the time. And so we received a congressional direct spending request with Senator Collins' help big time. But then the board also had to help fundraise over $1 million to help take it over the finish line. And they did, and they stepped up. And the community partners just have been amazing. And some have been original since the founding, and some have been new, which I think is great in both aspects. But it was needed from a hardware, equipment, but even the look. For example, our mission control is actually based off of Blue Origin. So Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, because it's saying commercial spaceflight and companies are here and they are a part of it. And so that's even integrated into our new design too.
So how much does the new design allow for swapping things, new missions in and out easier than what you had before, right? I mean, that strikes me. That's one of the advantages of the newer technology is once that's set, so to speak, it does seem like it might be easier to incorporate new missions that it's just a drop in of the software kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. It's software from 20 years ago to now has been going through upgrades, but really there's a whole new aspect to it. Even the physical space, the new design thinks about it differently. So each year we actually upgrade a lot of our experiments to say what is actually happening in space science research. Can we integrate that now? So it's kind of creating those, we call them isolation chambers, glove box. We have a hydroponic system, all those things of, do we even have spaces to switch out our experiments? Because we may be running a sequence that they actually make a discovery about water on a certain exoplanet or something, while we're running it. So we want to stay current and really replicate the on-Earth version of an experiment as much as we can. So it's creating flexibility there to allow us to do that. We've also made the physical footprint of the space lab bigger. All right, so if you remember anything from this podcast, students have an idea sometimes. Oh, this is what science is. This is what my high school science lab looks like. A room with tables, some sinks, right? Things like that. And we try to say science can happen in all different places, right? You can be outdoors. You can be in a river. You can be in an off-Earth laboratory. Science is happening here. STEM is happening here. And so we physically made the space bigger so we can run more programs in it with a flexibility, right, to run different types of experiments. And for us, it's simulations, right? You may be building a satellite and more space to do that. And we want to have students do it in that space. So if you are in a place that looks like an off-Earth laboratory, you're changing your mindset of where you can do STEM. And so that's just one small part of it, but I think an important part.
Do you have any interest personally in going to space?
Me, no.
Okay. I was just double checking.
But I'd love to support somebody.
I mean, I wonder how many kids come in and be like, yeah, I don't want to. And then they get done with doing one of your missions. They're like, that was awesome. Sign me up.
Well, and we have two sides. You go in mission control, then you go be an astronaut. And there are so many students that say, I love being a mission controller. I love being the person that it's my experiment. And they're giving me the data about my experiment. You know, the astronauts are just the eyes, ears, hands, right? Sending data back. But I'm the one who's running the experiment. I'm the one who's saying, wow, we're in an emergency. And they have to do a risk analysis and take care of it. And they really like that support aspect of being the engineer or scientist on Earth. So we love when we convert a mission control specialist.
I think that's what, a million years ago when my daughter did the program when she was in school, I think she said she was a communication director and she loved it. After they hit a certain age, you don't really hear what goes on at school, right? And we heard a lot about what happened that day. She was totally psyched about it. It was really cool.
And that brings up a good point that we say it in the mission. Communications is key. You can be this amazing scientist, this amazing engineer, but if you can't communicate with your partner, if you can't communicate with your team, even something as simple as we'll hear them say, oh, that's 3.2. Well, what's your units of measure? Like simple things. You have to communicate well to work as a team, which is a big aspect of the mission and of life. But communications is just so critical in all aspects of that mission, and they really see it. And teachers are like, oh, yes, the soft skills that have to go along with it. And that matters. So I'm glad that hit home, and I hope it still is.
She's definitely the communicator in the family in all the good ways. She's great. Kirsten, I am really appreciative of your time. Just as importantly, I'm appreciative of all the work we've been able to do together. I think we are both better off because we are able to collaborate and partner and we figure out who can do what. And I think the job that you guys are doing for inspiring kids and adults and connecting space to what actually is here on Earth is really critical and cool. You get people to do science before they even realize they're doing it. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Challenger is a fun place to work because it many times is the place where we can say yes. So I think that for other people out there that work in different capacities and different fields, but there'll be an opportunity to say yes, and it's going to bring you joy, and it's going to spread knowledge about what's happening in STEM, and that is just so awesome. So Kate's going to come for you. You're out there in the audience. Say yes, do it. And anyone, and then just an open invitation. Challenger is here for students, but really for people of Maine. And we want just everyone to be able to come see it and to really think of it as one of the STEM centers for them. Hope anyone's welcome.
We can't end on a better note than that. Thanks a million.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks for listening to the Maine Science Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your podcast platform of choice. And please leave a rating and review. It will help more people find us and help spread the word about some of the remarkable people doing science in Maine. The Maine Science Podcast is recorded at Discovery Studios at the Maine Discovery Museum in Bangor, Maine. The Maine Science Podcast is executive produced and hosted by me, Kate Dickerson, and edited and produced by Scott Loiselle. And the Discover Maine theme was composed and performed by Nick Parker.